South African Michael Brown is the author of The Presence Process, a healing journey into present moment awareness. In the late 1980s, he was living what he called a blissfully unconscious life as a music journalist.
If you call me, I will hear.
While on a music tour in South Africa, something happened that was to change his life forever.
And we were driving along onto the next venue, and the next thing I started feeling this weird feeling in my eye, which escalated into such unbelievable pain that I had to get out of the car and started throwing up on the side of the road. And at that time I thought it was just a one-off thing. I thought it was just, I didn't know what I thought, I can't even remember, but it was such excruciating pain. And then it continued to happen again and again and again. And so that was the start of it. And it was probably about 2 years before I actually got diagnosed as to what it was. And the diagnosis was that it was called Horton's syndrome or Horton's cathalgia, which is like a cross between neuralgia and cluster headaches and migraine. And they usually take about 45 minutes to go through. And what happens is all the nerve endings starting in the neck up into the side of the face and to the top of the head get swollen and bruised. And there's nothing you can take for it, because from the time you know it's happening to the time it peaks is usually about 10 to 15 minutes, and there's nothing that can stop it. And normally a person who suffers from that condition would have it seasonally. So you would have it for 3 months a year, for the same 3 months every year, and maybe 2 or 3 times a month. And my condition was that I had it sometimes up to 8 times a day, and I had it 12 months a year. That's what it took to get my attention, really. Well, I first did the obvious thing that we all do if we have something like that happen to us, was I looked for help outside of myself. And I went to everything. It was my first real introduction into spiritual healing. I went to see a Sangoma. I had cortisone injections in my face. On Christmas Eve, I had my wisdom teeth extracted, thinking that it could be that. And I mentioned to my late father-in-law that I had once taken LSD, and I had found I was pain-free from taking LSD for about 3 or 4 days. And he said that was interesting. There was a drug called a Sansert at the time, which had a gotamine in it, a derivative of LSD, and that was used as a pain remedy for nerve pains. So I was put on that, and the pain went away. And that lasted for a year, and then they stopped manufacturing that drug. And after I couldn't get that drug in my hand anymore, I realized I'd become addicted to that drug. It was not that it did anything to me, but I was addicted to the fact that this could help me. And I remember it was also just approaching Christmas in San Francisco when I couldn't get the drug in my hands. And it was the most terrible sinking feeling when I had my first attack again. By then I also realized that whenever I went to anyone to tell them what was going on with me, I knew more about it than them. I'd become the authority on my own condition. So it was pointless going to anyone because I knew more about what I was going through. And I realized that I couldn't live with this. I either had to kill myself or I had to heal myself. One night I had a terrible night. I had about 8 attacks. At that time I was married to a woman called Sarah Prowl. And she had a gift voucher for a friend, a massage voucher. And I begged her, I said, please give it to me. I've got to have some care and attention to my body today. I'm in so much pain. So I got the massage voucher for her, and I went and had the massage. And it was such a bad massage that I came back and I said to Sarah, I could do a better massage with both my hands tied behind my back. And she said, well, why don't you? And so that week I enlisted in the San Francisco School of Massage. And I found the moment that I started putting my attention into massage, and then I started to study polarity, and then I started to study Reiki, then I started to understand my own energy, and I found that when my energy was really up, I was less susceptible to pain. When my energy was down, so it almost seemed that there was a state of consciousness in which that pain, I was very susceptible to that pain, and if I could raise my awareness or my state of consciousness, I became less susceptible. And today I know that as being called present and being distracted or unconscious or not in the moment. Well, the first thing was that as I got involved in healing, I forgot that it was me that I was trying to heal. And so when you get involved in healing and you start to discover these tools, and some of them work and some of them don't, it's quite empowering, and you think, well, I want to share this with other people, I want to heal other people. And I eventually, in Tucson, opened my own healing practice and started doing healing work on other people. But really the turning point for me, as far as bringing it into a procedure was concerned, was when I first took peyote. I had taken other types of drugs before in my life, and they'd always made me feel out of it. It took me out of myself, is the only way I can say. In fact, I used them to get out of it because I was so unhappy in my own life, so I would use them to get out of it. But what peyote did is it brought me in to this body. It made me, for the first time, I felt 100% physically present, completely mentally clear, completely emotionally balanced, and what I would say is vibrationally connected, or people may use the word spiritual. I felt spiritually connected to my source, or whatever one may say that. And in that moment of clarity, I realized that the pain had nothing to do with what was happening to me now. The pain was related to something that happened to me from the past. It was really, what was happening was that my body was creating a situation of pain to try and bring me back into my body, because so much of myself was trapped in memories and unintegrated places in the past. And in that moment, I saw that that was one of the most desperate conditions of humanity, is that most of us did not live in the moment. We really lived in the past. We determined what we were going to do now based on the past, or projecting our fears into the future. Most of our awareness wasn't here available. It was trapped in unintegrated memories. And I realized that the most powerful thing I could do was to bring as much of myself into this moment as possible. And that also, if I could do that in a way that I could leave a trail of how I accomplished it, that would be of use to other people who might want to do the same thing. In that moment, sitting on the banks of a river which was actually called the Gila River, although it's spelled G-I-L-A, sitting on the banks of the Gila River, I realized that because I saw this in myself and I knew that I had no choice now but to bring myself present, that I could also do it as a way of service. I actually forgot about that intent. What happened was that intent was so powerful that it drove me into all sorts of experiences, which I felt at the time I was going through them, that I was really just bumbling through experiences. But in hindsight, I see what I was doing was I was going to this person, that teacher, that ceremony, that shaman, and looking for what made me present. And so they would do things to me or show me things to do to myself, and I was specifically interested in what can I do to myself. That's why I like breathing. I can breathe. No one has to breathe for me. And I liked Reiki because I can put my hands on myself. I liked anything I can do to myself. So I would try out anything, and then I would have a barometer of present moment awareness, which was the peyote experience. Does it bring me towards that space, or does it not do that? And if it brought me towards that space, I kind of put it in my toolbox. And so I spent years collecting these tools, went to Mexico, went all over the place. And then I got to a point when I was on a beach in Mexico, I was sitting there, I was kind of not even